A couple weeks ago, I made a video about what some consider to be the worst episode of Malcolm in the Middle. Season 6, Episode 5, Kitty's Back. You guys totally blew that video up, by the way, so thank you. However, a lot of people in the comments mentioned what they believe to be the worst episode of the show. A lot of those comments were in agreement that Burning Man was actually the worst episode in Malcolm in the Middle. So today, we are going to be looking at Season 7, Episode 1, Burning Man. Is it really that bad? Is this episode worthy of being called the worst episode of Malcolm in the Middle? Well, today we are going to find out. We start off with Malcolm and Reese sitting on their bed as they are excited to sneak out and go to the Burning Man festival. After that, Dewey comes in and starts getting annoyed with them as he proclaims that every year they plan to sneak out to go to Burning Man, but always end up wussing out with some sort of excuse as to why they can't go. Reese, however, is determined to go this year. We then cut to Malcolm and Reese in the bathroom as Malcolm is unrolling the toilet paper trying to calculate how much paper the family will use so he can write a message on it stating that they went to Burning Man. I am not entirely sure what the point of this is. They plan to sneak out of the house for the entire weekend, so no matter what, they are still going to get in trouble. Maybe the point of this is so that his parents won't get as worried when they realize that their kids are gone? I'm honestly not quite sure. But whatever their plan was, it did not seem to work as the next shot is Lois and Hal getting mad at them later that night for attempting to hitchhike to the Burning Man festival. And of course, the only reason they knew of this was because of Malcolm's little toilet paper scheme from earlier. Had he just, not done this and snuck off to the festival, they probably would have been fine. Either way, they would have gotten in trouble. But regardless, the plot is now where the writers needed it to be for us to proceed. Hal and Lois are furious at Malcolm and Reese as Lois explains that they were very stupid for sneaking out to some overblown keg party in the desert. Why they decided to have this conversation in their house and not in the car on the way back is beyond me. But whatever. Lois and Hal clearly do not understand what Burning Man is. And since Burning Man is a real festival that exists in real life, I guess I will take just a few seconds to explain what this is. Essentially, Burning Man is a week-long festival that takes place in the desert. The festival focuses on artistic expression and community, while Hal and Lois are under the impression that it's just some druggy Sublime type festival. We then see Malcolm passionately explaining to his parents what Burning Man actually is. Rather than getting angry at Malcolm, Lois and Hal actually get excited about the festival and want to go with them. We then cut to the next day with the entire family in an RV heading to the Burning Man festival. Lois and Hal are very excited while Malcolm and Reese are obviously severely disappointed that they have to attend this once-in-a-lifetime experience with their parents. Obviously, this family cannot afford a nice RV like this, so it is explained that Hal was able to borrow his RV from his boss as a return in favor of him taking the blame for a fart in an elevator for him. The family then pulls up to Burning Man. Malcolm and Reese step off the RV and see a ton of weird things around them. We then see Hal step out of the RV as he begins giving orders to Reese and Malcolm, only to find out that they have completely ditched the family. Once he sees Dewey behind him, however, he then decides that he will essentially be his slave for this entire experience, claiming, "You snooze, you lose." Now here is where the episode starts breaking off into different plots. The main plot stars Malcolm falling in love with a woman old enough to be his mother, and I'm pretty sure that this plot is probably the main reason that so many fans dislike this episode. This is the main part of the episode that I'm going to be focusing on. The B plot stars Hal and Dewey, and I must say that this is actually one of the best Hal episodes in the entire series. The other plots, aside from those, involve Reese exploring around and learning about Burning Man, and Lois and Jamie essentially doing the same thing, but separately. We then cut to Reese and Malcolm walking around the festival, super excited at all the crazy stuff they are seeing. Some big weird alien-looking thing then runs between the two brothers, causing Malcolm to lose his balance, and he steps on a cactus. this. Malcolm asks Reese for a hand, only to find out that Reese has completely ditched him. We then cut to Hal as he is setting up the parameters around the RV. He then notices that a bunch of people are watching him and offers them some hamburgers once he fires up the grill. As the episode continues, more and more festival goers continue to surround Hal as he is setting up his campsite. Hal assumes that this is because he offered them free food, but the real reason everyone is watching him is because they assume that this is a performance he is doing of the middle-class suburban dad. We then cut to Malcolm standing in line at the medical tent trying to get his foot treated. And this is actually where something really strange happens. Malcolm turns to the camera to break the fourth wall as he is complaining about waiting in line. Now, if you have seen even just a single episode of Malcolm in the Middle, you'll know that Malcolm does this frequently. Since he is the main character, he constantly breaks the fourth wall by turning to the camera to say what he is thinking. Now, obviously, since he is breaking the fourth wall, it is assumed that no one else can hear him as he is directly addressing us, the viewers. However, right after Malcolm turns to the camera to complain about the long line, this man in the giant skull hat tells Malcolm that the line is much shorter at the shaman's tent. So this begs the question, can this guy read minds, or is Malcolm actually speaking out loud for everyone to hear whenever he talks to the camera? If the answer is the latter, then that would make for some very awkward moments during earlier episodes. Sure, you could call it a coincidence, as no one likes waiting in long lines, and Malcolm just so happens to be right in front of this guy, but if that's the case, then this is pretty weak writing if you ask me. For the plot to continue, Malcolm needs to somehow end up at this shaman's tent to get treated. If we are following the same rules about Malcolm breaking the fourth wall that we have been following this entire series, then this scene, in the real perspective, is essentially just Malcolm standing in line, saying nothing, and this man just randomly offers to take him to a different place where the line is much shorter. We then cut to Malcolm entering the shaman's tent, where we meet this older lady who Malcolm later claims is old enough to be his mother. The strange lady then takes off his shoe and sock and begins to suck his foot. As she is tasting Malcolm's foot, she then begins to psychoanalyze Malcolm. Malcolm is obviously super creeped out at this, but miraculously, it worked and his foot is now healed. Malcolm then turns to the camera explaining how she is as old as his mom and a little bit cuckoo, but then states that he is turned on. Now here is where things start to get a little weird. In this episode, Malcolm is a minor. We know he is a minor because he still attends high school, but also, during the next episode, Health Insurance, Reese claims that he is 17 years old, and we all know that Reese is older than Malcolm by a couple years, so my rough guess is that Malcolm is about 15 or 16 at most in this episode, and the plot focuses on him falling in love with a middle-aged woman. We then do yet another jump to what I am assuming is at least an hour or two later as Malcolm and this strange woman are sitting by a table lit with candles having a deep discussion about life, space, spirituality, and, I guess, Godzilla, as they are now getting really close to each other, signaling romantic foreshadowing. Now this is getting extremely weird. Despite the fact that Malcolm is a genius, he is still a minor. It would have been totally acceptable to just have Malcolm have a little boy crush on this strange lady, but the fact that they made this woman actually participate and encourage Malcolm by liking him back is definitely really weird. But if that wasn't weird enough, the next shot is Malcolm and the strange lady naked in bed together, entailing that they just did the deed. Yeah. We then cut to the next day as Lois is serving breakfast to Hal and Reese. Hal notices that the food is green, to which Lois explains that she is being artistic and put food coloring in their eggs.
It's artistic. I'm being artistic.
Hal then complains that he doesn't like green eggs and toast, which is a fun little nod to Dr. Seuss. Lois explains to Hal that he should relax and stretch a little since they are on vacation, to which Dewey claims that this is far from a vacation for him, as he has been doing nothing this entire time except for slaving away for Hal. Now, the original reason that Hal made Dewey do all of this was because he was the only one present when he was looking for someone to help him. Now that it's the next day and Reese is sitting right there, you would think that maybe Hal would give Dewey a break and make Reese do the work today, but no, he continues to use Dewey. Not that I have a problem with this, as the payoff for this ends up being pretty funny. Of course, Hal and his family are very poor, and he had to borrow this RV from his boss, so it is of the utmost importance to Hal that this RV is spotless. We then cut back to Malcolm in bed with the shaman lady. As they are both waking up, Malcolm asks the lady what they are going to do today, as he expects her to spend the whole day with him. The lady claims that she has a ton of rebirthing ceremonies to do, but they can get together later, to which Malcolm says okay. The lady immediately senses some ill feelings in his response, so she asks him what's wrong, to which Malcolm claims he is okay and is feeling happy. She then claims that Malcolm has contempt for her and what she does, and claims that he doesn't take the rebirthing ceremony seriously. Malcolm then finally admits that he does in fact think the ritual is silly and weird. The lady then gets offended at this and kicks Malcolm out of the tent. I think the main reason Malcolm really likes this woman is because she is able to read his thoughts. The only other person in the series who is seen being able to do this is his mother, Lois. Oh, and that guy with the skull hat, I guess. We then cut to Hal frantically cleaning the RV while Malcolm is lying in bed complaining. Hal actually agrees with Malcolm as he is not having a good time, stating that they are surrounded by freaks and weirdos. Malcolm then realizes that he needs to get over himself if he wants to be with this shaman lady. We then cut to Reese dancing around a fire with other people. He then gets abducted by two big dudes, but they don't do this because he's in trouble or anything like he expects. Instead, they want him to burn the giant wooden man statue, which is how they end the festival, hence the name Burning Man. In an attempt to get the strange lady back in bed with him, Malcolm decides that he is going to be participating in this strange ceremony. Despite all the talk about this ritual and Malcolm thinking it's stupid, this is actually the first time us, the viewer, and assumingly Malcolm as well, have actually seen the ritual. So it kind of doesn't make sense that Malcolm was making fun of it earlier, as he hadn't even seen it until now. Essentially, this ritual consists of taking your clothes off, getting splashed with water, and then being pushed into a horde of people holding blow-up pads as you try to make your way through. The end goal being that you are literally being reborn, as this ceremony is supposed to mimic what it's like to come out of your mother's womb. I think so, at least. I am only guessing. As Malcolm is looking at what's going on, he is clearly confused, as with him being a genius and all, Malcolm finds it hard for himself to enjoy new things, especially things that are as out there as this. But regardless, Malcolm is still hung up over Miss Shaman Lady, who I am just now realizing never even gets a name, and goes through with the ceremony. Right as Malcolm gets covered in rebirthing water, we cut back to our plot with Reese. The man then explains that Reese needs to burn the statue to end the festival. However, Reese suddenly becomes hesitant to do so, as doing this will put an end to the festival and all the fun he's having, so he no longer is willing to participate in this. We then cut back to Malcolm as he is being pushed through the bubbles during the rebirthing ceremony. When Malcolm comes out, the strange unnamed shaman lady is surprised to see him and asks him if she is the reason he did this. Malcolm then admits that she initially was the reason he did this, but then found himself actually affected by this strange ritual, despite having logical doubts about it a few moments prior. He claims that normally he isn't able to enjoy things that he can logically see through, but this time it was different and he actually feels reborn. Now that Malcolm went through with the rebirthing ceremony, he expects that the strange shaman lady will now want to be with him, but he is sternly let down as she explains that she can never see him again as he is way too malleable. So, yeah, the entire main plot for Malcolm is him falling in love and banging a middle-aged spiritual woman and then essentially getting ghosted the next day. Aside from the blaring fact that it's kind of weird and inappropriate, it's also just not that entertaining. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just me. We then cut back to Reese, still trying to fend off the horde of festival goers with the torch. As he is doing this, Hal then drives up to him, telling him that they need to leave, as at this point, Hal is completely fed up with this whole festival and wants to get out of here. Eventually, the power of the crowd becomes too strong to resist, so in an act of quick thinking, which is not Reese's strong suit, Reese decides to throw the torch seemingly randomly. The torch then lands inside the RV, right on a bunch of cleaning chemicals, which causes a giant explosion, completely destroying the RV. And that concludes the Burning Man episode, as the last scene is the family sitting around the dinner table. Reese and Lois are super pumped and want to go again next year, as they are the only characters that had a good time. Hal is obviously upset about the RV, but the fact that it wasn't even his RV makes it a whole lot worse, as now he is stuck doing a bunch of chores for his boss so he won't get fired. By the way, it's absolutely hilarious that even after Burning Man is over, he still subconsciously is choosing Dewey to help him with all of this, even though it was Reese's fault for blowing up the RV. And again, Reese is right there, and Hal could ask Reese this time, which he should, because this is all Reese's fault, but he still chooses Dewey. I just think it's hilarious. So yeah, all in all, this episode definitely has a lot of strange things about it, and the main plot with Malcolm was definitely not the best. Is it the worst episode, however? In my opinion, no. I still think Kitty's Back was much worse, but this one definitely sits behind that one for now. That could totally change when I decide to review more episodes. Malcolm in the Middle is a great show, so even the worst episodes are still entertaining. So it's hard to imagine that anyone would be completely upset or unsatisfied with any episode of Malcolm in the Middle. Well, never mind. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel grow. YouTube thinks that you will enjoy this video here, so I highly suggest going to check it out.